There are currently 84 different weapons in the division, each with stats and characteristics that make it difficult to determine which weapon is best for PvP, but using data mined code, in-game comparisons and a large dose of science, I've discovered not only the best weapon for PvP, but the best weapon from each weapon category for PvP in patch 1.1 and potentially patch 1.2. Now if you're not interested in how I came to this conclusion, you can click here to skip the science, but if you're here to learn as much as possible about the best weapons for PvP in the division, then stick around. The 6 different categories of weapons all have various potential candidates to be best, apart from sidearms, of which I'd recommend a high rate of fire one with a weapon talent that complements your build. I personally use harmful to cause bleeding to fleeing targets to slow them down, but you might want to use cool-headed for a skill build, or skilled to reduce your cooldown on your signature skill. Either way, I would not recommend using a sidearm for PvP, as they are best used for utility with your build. Examining each of the remaining 5 weapon categories, I created graphs just like this one to get a good idea of the headshot burst damage of each weapon within a certain weapon category. On the left is the damage done against players with 65% armor and 10% damage reduction from the Reckless Chest talent. On the bottom is the time it took to produce this damage in seconds, and these lines represent killing a player with 100k HP. Where the coloured lines end means a reload is required, and therefore the burst damage ends. To get the plotted lines you see here, I'm only using headshots. Weapons that are gear score 204 have the brutal weapon talent at 24.5%, and I'm also assuming that the player shooting has 4 pieces of Sentry's Call equipped because it's extremely effective right now. As the community predicted, the MP7 is the best SMG for burst damage, bursting down a player with full passive mitigation in just under 1 second with an extended RPM mag mod. The Vector and AUG are roughly the same, and so are the MP5 and SMG9, so the MP5 isn't as good as the community assumed it was. Finally, we have the T821s, the same SMG subcategory as the Midas, so if you've been selling your Midas for credits, you've been doing it right, because T821s are the worst SMGs for burst damage in the division. I went ahead and used this exact same method for each of the remaining 4 weapon categories: assault rifles, light machine guns, marksman rifles and shotguns. The best of the assault rifles is the LVOAC. The LVOAC is best for its crazy high rate of fire and therefore burst damage, providing a long stream of burst damage that is easy to control with a lot of stability mods. The best of the light machine guns is the L86. The L86 is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Everyone just assumes that LMGs in general suck, but this weapon is one of the best automatic weapons for medium range combat, coming with a surprising burst that will catch many players off guard. Of the Marksman Rifles, of course, it's the M1A. The M1A is the king of long-range combat for how it can accurately pump out stupid amounts of burst damage. Add explosive rounds into the mix, and you get an idea of why players use this in PvP. Finally, of the weapon categories are the shotguns, and choosing which shotgun is best is something I cannot do this early on in the video. You will see why later. For now though, the double barrel shotgun, Super 90 and M870 shotguns are all potential candidates to be the best, but I'm only going to include the Super 90 on this chart, as having 3 shotguns will make it messy. This chart displays the best burst damage PvP weapons from each weapon category using this mag size and rate of fire mag mod, but if we convert it into a weapon damage rate of fire mag mod, we get more burst damage at the cost of losing 50% of our rounds. Now I personally prefer the mag size and rate of fire mag mod, but in this video we're looking at the best burst damage weapons in the division, so using a weapon damage rate of fire mag mod is only fair because it's the best mag mod for burst damage too. Because it's realistic, we're going to include 25% crit chance and 100% crit damage on all of these weapons, making the graph look like this. However, because SMGs get a passive crit chance bonus, we're going to throw an extra 25% crit chance on top of the MP7, putting the MP7 just in front of the Super 90, but still nowhere near the power of the M1A. To make this graph as relative as we possibly can, I'm not going to rely on pen and paper stats given to me by the division. We're going to convert all of the weapons in this video to semi-automatic weapons so we can see what each individual shot does on this chart. This vertical line here shows the damage inflicted per shot, and this horizontal line represents a time between each shot. To get this time between each shot, I recorded at 100 FPS and used my editing software to see the time between the shots. So the time between each shot here is accurate to microseconds. Doing this for all of the weapons here gives us a very squiggly graph, but this graph shows us that high weapon damage weapons like shotguns and marksman rifles start their burst damage off with a giant head start over the automatic weapons you see here. However, because we're considering 4 pieces Sentry's Call here, automatic weapons can apply free debuffs much sooner than semi-automatics, so let's adjust this graph to include that variable. Bear in mind that the first shot from a shotgun applies 3 stacks of Sentry's Call because it fires 8 pellets, but the M1A gets the full benefit from Sentry's Call on the 4th shot like all other weapons. With the graph up to this stage, I can now go over the 3 shotguns I was talking about earlier, the Super 90, double barrel shotgun and M870, which one is best. As you can see here, the Super 90 produces more damage than the M870 in total and is more versatile with its additional shots. Yes, you can down a player at the same time with both weapons, but the Super 90 can 2-shot weaker enemies and does more total damage on the 3rd shot, making the Super 90, in my opinion, a better weapon for PvP. As for the double barrel shotgun, it's only really better than the Super 90 between these 2 points. Anywhere else and the Super 90 is better, even if you're using the one is none talent. So because the Super 90 is better in more situations than the double barrel shotgun, I would say that the Super 90 is a better choice for PvP, and is therefore the best weapon from the shotgun weapon category. Looking at this chart as a whole with the best weapons from each weapon category, we can see that quite clearly the M1A is way out in front, capable of downing a player in just 360 milliseconds. And to prove that these results are accurate, here is the same M1A I've been using in this video, downing a player in just 362 milliseconds, from the first hit to the killing blow. When the balanced weapon talent is fixed, it would take roughly twice as long to shoot a follow-up shot accurately with the M1A, even with the accurate weapon talent and 2 accuracy enhancing weapon mods, equating to an average of 350 milliseconds between each shot, instead of 180 milliseconds. So if we adjust our chart to suit the changes in patch 1.2, the M1A produces around half the burst damage it did in patch 1.1. To give the M1A a fighting chance here, we're going to include the changes to the Sentry's Call 4-set bonus not working with automatic weapons in patch 1.2. So instead we're going to go with 3 pieces of Strikers for 50% crit damage, and 2 pieces of Sentry's Call for the 30% headshot damage for these automatic weapons, because this combo will probably be the best gear combo for automatics in patch 1.2 PvP. With these changes, we can see that the LVOAC and L86 kill a player in roughly the same amount of time, so burst damage isn't that affected by the changes coming in 1.2. What is surprising though is how the MP7, and all SMGs for that matter, benefit more from this setup over 4 pieces of Sentry's Call, and this is simply because SMGs have a passive crit chance, making the 50% crit damage on Strikers go further. So if anything, SMGs will appear like they've been buffed in patch 1.2 because more players will be using this gear setup. So in conclusion, the best weapon for PvP in patch 1.1 in the division is the M1A, and by a long shot too. But when patch 1.2 hits, it will be the MP7, closely followed by the Super 90 shotgun. However, the reason I believe the MP7 is far superior over the Super 90 shotgun is not because it just has increased range of the Super 90, or how it simply does more burst damage. It's how it can kill players at many different health breakpoints due to its consistent damage, making the MP7 way more versatile than this Super 90 will ever be. Not to mention the MP7 is far easier to use compared to the timing skills required to use a Super 90 effectively. Hopefully this information will make it to the devs so that they can adjust weapon damage to make other weapons more viable in 1.2, because just like 1.1, most players will use SMGs in patch 1.2, if not more so, what with how the M1A is taking a big hit from the upcoming changes, and effectively, assault rifles and LMGs are actually being nerfed. Thank you for watching, and if the changes in 1.2 don't reflect this chart, I will create a follow-up video.